Welcome back, baseball fans, to another edition of the Prep Baseball Report of North Carolina podcast. I'm Brandon Hall, the Mid-Atlantic Scouting Director, and he's Matt Payne, our North Carolina Scouting Director. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Good to be back on.
Yeah, I know our buddies down in Florida and Georgia, and then later today, Sammy down there in South Carolina get pounded by rain and the hurricane that just touched base. So, speaking of rain, we've just been flooded here, it seems like, lately. It's affecting our scout days now. I need this stuff to go away.
Yeah, we got hit pretty hard up here, and it looks like more's headed our way.
Yeah, my daughter started back to school this week, and with the start of school comes soccer. So mama coaches soccer, and somehow I get roped into being an assistant. Hopefully the other assistant has a better idea of what's going on. I can just hang back and not do anything. But we're already in full-fledged weather mode. We're watching the Weather Channel, trying to figure out if we're going to get our practices in and how we're going to do this. And flashbacks to when I was actually sitting in a college, a locker room, and I think we had the Weather Channel on about 12 hours a day, trying to figure out how we're going to get practices in and how we're going to schedule this and how we're going to schedule that. So hopefully, the fall we'll get it going. We'll get some of that nice weather. We'll get some of that cool weather. I don't mind it being damp, but we need the thunderstorms to start rolling out of here.
Yep, get to September and get some of that humidity out.
Last week we spent a bunch of time on the 2024 rankings. Those are posted. Those are up. We expanded to 290 in the state of North Carolina. We had a handful of guys that were in the national rankings that were released on Friday, and I know Shooter's going through and doing some things on that. And we had talked about that class being, really middle heavy. The top half of the class, I think, has some really good college players in it. But we didn't have a whole lot of players that we projected to be top 3, top 5, top 7 round guys. Now, today, rankings week again, we're releasing the 2025 rankings in North Carolina. Initial impressions as you're going through the 25 class.
25 class in the state's a loaded class. You go through the names at the top, there'll be a heavy presence in the national rankings and a lot of guys that the pro scouts will have eyes on moving forward.
Yeah, and that process has already started. I know just because of the 24 class and again, not weak, but some of the lack of the current prospect status on guys for East Coast Pro, they took a handful of younger players down there, and those guys played really well. And so I think as we're going through the 25 class, it's funny how this stuff kind of averages out, because you're sitting here thinking, man, we got this loaded group at the top. We got 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that may be top 3 round type prospects, and they're going to have to filter themselves out. This class has a chance just to be loaded. But as we get through the class a little bit, it kind of balances it out. When you compare the 24 to the 25 class, the number of Division I commits you project, number of college players you project, are the two classes that much different in terms of their totality? And are they different from classes that we've seen over the last 5 to 6 years?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think this class may thin out some as you get into it right now, but they're heading into their junior season, and I think you'll have several guys pop up by state games next summer, and this class could be deeper than what we think it may be.
Yeah, we talked about this the other day. As much as we're out and we're covering and we're trying to find out who everybody is, really it's when they get into their senior year that we're zoned in on just about everybody. During that junior year, we still have guys that haven't played a single varsity inning yet that may be really, really, really good players. The bodies take a little bit longer to develop. Maybe they were behind somebody at the varsity level. So we're constantly looking and talking to high school coaches, and we'll have some high school coaches, starting here in the next couple of weeks, call us and go, hey, I've been light on this guy, and you guys need to get on him. He's going to blow up. He's a guy. You don't have him in your list, but you need to come see him, and we'll start hitting the road and seeing practices, seeing workouts. Then we got some tournament coverage coming up. We've got our scout days continuing, and then we're going to run our senior games and our top underclass games as we get into end of October. So still a ton of a lot of the list to build. As we're getting ready to post the list, today's Wednesday as we're shooting this, you're going to post the 2025 class, what number are you kind of looking to get to in terms of the totality of the rankings?
I think it'll be around 150 right now, and give it a chance to grow when we update them again after the All-State events, and then the big update at the end of next summer when we feel like we've seen most of the guys in the class.
And so you compare those two classes. We're at 290 in the 24 class. We're at 150 in the 25 class. And it does give you an idea of how much we will see over the next year, because we will be adding, between our next update at the end of the fall session, going into the spring, and then again at the end of the summer next year. Those updates, we're looking at adding, 100 plus kids to the rankings because we get to know them better. We got a better idea of who they are. And instead of just throwing a bunch of names into a list and not being really sure of what's going on with that list, I love the approach you've taken with let's rank the guys we're pretty sure about. We can build some other lists. We can highlight players in other ways, but let's make sure that the guys we have in this list are really kind of have a chance to fall in those areas that we're ranking them.
Yeah, guys that'll have a chance to play in college as you get on down the list, and balancing out what we've seen in gameplay and what we've heard about guys and what guys have done at our events. Just watch them take BP or throw a bullpen, and kind of factor that into the gameplay as well.
Well, let's jump in the 2025 rankings in North Carolina. We're going to talk about really the top 7 to 8 guys right out of the chute. We have a new number one. Had a new number one in the 24 class, new number one in the 25 class. And to give you an idea of how tight this class is, our number one from the last time we published this list falls to number 7, Briggs McKenzie. Briggs has battled some injuries, was down a little bit this spring and this summer. We're not worried about the long-term effects. I honestly think he's going to bounce back up in the list. But this group, 1 through 7, so tight that just that little bit, even though we know he's going to bounce back and get back, just that little bit affected his ranking, which honestly doesn't happen a whole lot because most of the time players aren't this tight at the top.
Yeah, Coy James going to number 1. He was in discussions when the initial list came out, and he's been probably the most consistent guy in the class from, the initial rankings until now. And game performer, goes to East Coast Pro and has a great week down there. And he's with Team USA right now, and look forward to seeing him at our All-American game in a couple weeks.
Yeah, No Name was with Team USA last summer, I think the 16Us, and won MVP of whatever tournament that was that they won. And then one of the few, 16, 17Us playing with the 18Us. Typically that 18U team is really, really senior heavy. So having a junior make that club gives you an idea of how much Team USA thinks of him, wanting his talent on the roster, one, but wanting his individual personality on the roster, two. You mentioned the PBR All-American games. At this point, we've got 3 players from North Carolina that are going to be representing the underclass team. And the way our All-American game will work, we're going to play at the Brewer Stadium in Milwaukee, kind of a multi-day event culminating in the All-Star game. It'll be the 24 class versus the 25 class. And with the 24 class, nobody from North Carolina represented on that All-American game. And again, we've talked about, with that class not having that top end representative. But then you go to the 25 class, and we've got 3 with James, Tyler Baird, Josh Hammond. 1 position player, 2 pitchers. Hammond may get at bat there as well. I know Shooter's kind of working on scheduling that out, but wanting to see him swing it some too. Talk about those 3 guys, and we talked about James. Let's talk about Baird and Hammond and kind of what they have to offer, what they've done this summer, and kind of getting prepared for the All-American game.
Yeah, Baird, another guy that was electric at East Coast Pro. And, Hammond, great high school season, great summer, just continues to make jumps. And one thing that stands out for Hammond is just his competitiveness, and every time he takes the mound, he's out to win and stick it to you a little bit. And Baird, loved the upside, loved the projection, and really, really excited about seeing those guys in the future.
And I think it's a unique setup with that All-American game. I don't think I've ever seen it where you're having underclass play against the upper class. And honest, all honesty, there's a big gap among most players. If you take the average player in the junior class, the average player in the senior class, that 1 year development tends to be fairly big. I think when you're taking the top end of the class, that the 25 class will bridge that gap a little bit more. But really, a unique environment, not only for pro scouts but for college scouts, because with Tyler, he's still uncommitted, and there are going to be some uncommitted players that are in that All American game with the way the new rules have played out. Um, you know, what are you most excited about with the totality of that event and it being our first one? And seeing how we're putting that together.
Yeah, seeing those two classes go head to head will be it'll be interesting. Kind of be bragging rights for who's the better class, and uh, I think the young guys will go into it with a ton of excitement, and really to see North Carolina represented, with three guys from one class, I think is very impressive. And you go down and there was four or five other guys right below those that
Yeah.
were in the mix to get invites as well.
And they still may, with injuries, with guys playing into the fall, some guys may get tired. We may see some other guys get invites. I know guys that we've talked to Shooter about as he's putting this together. We've talked about Rhett Johnson, who we have at number 4. We've talked about Grant Nicholson at number 5. Let's start with Rhett. An outfielder, infielder, NC State commit, Wayne Country Day. Left-handed hitter, plays with fast pace. What have you liked about Rhett Johnson since really we saw him in 7th grade when we took him down to Atlanta with our junior future games?
He always hits. Saw him during the high school season. He'd turn around 93, 94. He's advanced on the bases for his age, and gets on base, makes things happen. And I don't think he's ever seen an arm that he doesn't think he can drop the ball against.
Very confident. No, you're absolutely right, and he's a table setter for that Wayne Country Day offense. And when he gets on, he feeds a lot of fastballs to the guys behind him, because if you're going to throw break a ball, he's going to very easily steal second and probably third. The thing about him for me that I've been impressed with his growth through the high school and being a freshman, sophomore, now being an upperclassman, has been his willingness to play everywhere. We've seen him in center, we've seen him in the corner outfield, we've seen him at second base, we've seen him flip over a little bit to the left side of the infield. Where is he going to play at NC State? I don't know, but I think he's going to play because he's going to give Coach Avent that option. I can go anywhere, put me in a lineup, I'll be a spark plug there, but I can go anywhere defensively to get our best 9 in the lineup. Grant Nicholson, right-handed pitcher from Charlotte Christian, sitting number 5, a Wake Forest commit. A righty I saw as a freshman during spring break. They brought him up at his freshman year, and really intriguing. Long, lanky body, kind of a thin build, but the arms got some whip to it. What have you liked about Grant's development and seen over the past 6 months?
Maybe as much upside as anyone in the class. He's got the metrics stand out on the fastball and the breaking ball, and 6'5", ton of projection, stays in the zone, and I think he's a guy that has some big jumps ahead of him.
When we look at the rankings, and we've talked a little bit about the top 5 guys, I think you could go down to Briggs at 7, and really, if all those guys stay healthy, if all those guys are really getting a chance to peak what they have a chance to be in high school, all 7 of those guys could end up pretty high on draft boards. So it's a year plus, 2 years away. We got some time, but I think that's where that class stands. As we look through the rest of the top 25, who's the guy on the list as you're looking through that and going, we may be light on him right now because I think there's some projection in there that may come in the next 2 years, and he may jump up into that category of being in with those top 7 guys as a guy pro scouts really have to evaluate and make a decision on.
You think you can look at the next 2 guys and Kelvin Paulino and Sean Jenkins. I mean, Paulino always hits. You don't always see high school guys that can drive the ball the other way as well as he does. And then Sean Jenkins, 6'3", 6'4", loose, athletic. We saw him at state games. It was impressive. I think he's been up to 93 maybe, can spin the ball. And I think, 10 or 15 pounds on him, and you could see him in the top 5 before the class is over.
Yeah, he was a big winner out of state games, and even talking to the coach of East Carolina where he's committed, they had not seen that yet. And so, credit to him. And Sean's with is he with A Lab in the summers?
Yes, Athletes
Yeah,
Lab.
credit those guys at A Lab. You're starting to see them churn out some arms and churn out some bodies that have really taken some jumps and gained some maturity and gained some strength when they've been in that program for about 2 years. So, maybe something to look for when we're watching guys come through that program too, because they've shown an ability to develop some high end talent there. As we slip outside the top 25, I'm sorry, the top 24, we're going to go to number 25, Zach Bender. Zach was with us at the Future Games, just committed to Chapel Hill, left-handed hitter. Give me the assessment on Zach. What did you like about him? And what's the prospects for him as he gets to Chapel Hill in the next couple of years?
Always looks comfortable in the box. With him at Future Games, rarely takes a bad swing. Has a plan when he gets in there. Can drive the ball to both gaps, and just a left-handed hitter that's a threat. And just really like his presence at the plate.
Yeah, he's very, very, very hitterish. And, you start talking about, when we're lining these things up and we're putting grades on guys and, you're saying, man, they've got tools. But the one tool that really matters for position guys is, do they hit? And is it loud? And are they on the barrel? And is there quickness? And Zach's checking all those boxes. I think he's got a chance to roll into Chapel Hill and be an immediate contributor because he's got a chance to hit immediately. I don't think he's going to be freaked out by velocity or stuff. He's so calm in the box, and there's such a direct path. Trust his hands. We've seen him handle high level arms. I think that's going to continue. We're extremely excited for him with that commitment, and really a player that we had a really good time being around for multiple days down there in Atlanta, and now we're seeing his hard work over the last several years pay off. As we move further through the list, let's talk about just kind of the groupings here. 30 through, boy, this is, the class has a little bit of length. Let's go 30 through 50, right in that area. And really, when I look at the players in that group, I'm looking at players that have a tool. I'm looking at players that have had success, and I'm looking at players that have projection left. Is there anybody in that 30 through 50 range that jumps out at you and go, he's going to be a really interesting follow just to see how it develops in the coming year?
I think our Future Games guys we took down there, from Gabe Murray on the mound to Xavier McCory and Connor Robertson and Wilmer Martinez and Ian Williams and Davis Cabbage. I think all those guys are, you got guys that can play in the middle and defend. You got left-handed hitters with versatility, and you have arms that have some athleticism and can spin a breaking ball. And really interesting to see the jumps those guys may have and how they continue to develop their tools moving forward.
Yeah, two names that did not make the Future Games final cut list when we were handing out the invites, but were right there on the verge. And then actually we were able to get them into our Mid-Atlantic Pro Case up in Virginia. Riley Gibson and Amari Burris. Riley Gibson's from First Flight High School. Listed as an outfielder, right-handed pitcher, probably a pitcher first for me. Lean, long body, lanky arm, whippy, and the ball explodes out of his hand. I think there's been some command and control issues at times, but I think some of that's because of how the arm works. And the more he throws, the more he gets used to his arm speed, the more he cleans up his direction, the better control and command he's going to show. He shows a firm ability to spin the baseball. Again, the arm works. It's a lean body. What's the body doing the next year? If he puts on 15, 20 pounds, it's the mass equals gas. He may start throwing really hard. If he's not ready to put on that weight yet, he's just continually getting stronger, but it's not really showing up in terms of pounds. The direction cleans up, the line cleans up, and just reps, we may see the velocity tick up. And then it becomes a really good sign for a college program. Amari Burris, a player that we saw last year at the C35 Scout Day at Boschheimer Stadium, followed him through from Durham Academy, saw him during the summer, and I saw him at the Pro Case. And he's twitchy, he's quick, he's got strength, there's leverage in the swing. If he's a left-handed hitter, he's probably a little bit more of a prime candidate for some colleges right now, trying to get him off the board. But I think somebody's going to get a really good, athletic, high-ceiling player out of Amari when they decide to pull the trigger on him. Any thoughts on Amari as you kind of evaluate that swing and look and see where he could be an asset in the coming years?
Very athletic. I think he's still in the process of figuring out how his body works and matching that with the swing that plays best for him in games versus just BP.
We're going to switch the gears in the rankings a little bit and talk just a little bit. Matt, I'm going to let you kind of roll through this list as I'm talking, looking for newcomers, guys that are new to the rankings, guys you're excited about, guys that we may be a little bit light on right now because we just don't have the amount of information we may have on a guy that, let's say, we saw for 5 days at future games. We got a ton of information on those guys in those 5 days on the field and how they act and really just getting to know them. But as you're looking through this list and we're looking at guys that are first time ranked in North Carolina as we expand to that 150 number, who are some of the guys that you look at and go, I like where he is right now. I think the ranking's right. But, man, if X, Y, and Z happen, we could see him really vaulting up the list.
Sam Kerner, catcher from Boyer, left-handed hitting catcher. Got to see him some. Really good catch and throw guy. Can handle the bat. Look forward to seeing him more. Michael Gerganis, he was in there, but he makes a jump. Just really impressive at the top prospect games. Johnny Ray, athletic left-handed hitting outfielder, makes a jump. Good week at state games. A couple newcomers, Cannon Lee and Zeb Swingham, two infielders. Good actions defensively. Both right-handed hitters. Interesting to see how it plays out for those guys. JD Mace, 6'5" arm from Burlington Christian. Played some outfield too, athletic. Interested to see what kind of jumps he has moving forward.
Mace is one of those guys that the body and the direction is going to clean up as he's a good athlete. I mean, he was one of our better runners at top prospect games. I think he ran sub 6'9". So obviously when he gets everything moving in the same direction, there's some quickness, there's some strength there. The biggest thing for him on the mound is trying to figure out where that mound's going and where he's going. The arm's clean, and I agree with you. I think, does he figure out the body? Does he figure out his delivery? Does he figure out where his belly button is on a day-to-day basis? And is he able to repeat? And then the more he repeats, does the arm quicken into the rank of number 69 jump up into the 40s or 30s? And so there's some there's some room there. Another guy that you mentioned with Johnny Ray, he moves up for us as a guy we had seen, but he bumps up about 11 spots in the rankings because he's gotten stronger. And it's not that the swing's a lot cleaner, and it's not that the the aggression or the swing path or the mechanics to clean it. He just got there's legitimate hand strength there, and when he's on time for a ball, he punishes baseballs. The next step for him is can he clean the swing up enough so he find the barrel a little bit more often? Because if he does that rank of 61 again could jump into the 30s just because of again how tightly bunched some of these guys are. You mentioned Cannon Lee and Zeb Swingham being new to the group. Swingham at number 60, TC Roberson, state champion. Talk a little bit about trying to grade out guys that have elite or advanced tool sets but are really raw in the game of baseball versus a guy like Swingham who he does everything. And when I say average, I'm talking about the chance to play average at a high college level. A Division I chance to be average. And so that's what I mean when I say average. So he has average tool sets when you look at that. But there may not be one flashy tool set, one where you can kind of lean on and go, man, that's a special tool. When you're grading out a Swingham versus a guy that may have that, even let's talk about JD Mace because he may end up being special because of the length, because of the whip. It's just not there yet, and there's some rawness to his game. As you're going through these lists, how hard is it kind of separating those guys?
I It's really hard to separate them, and I think where they end up at is a lot of just preference from the colleges that recruit them. But putting the list together, you don't know what kind of training JD Mace does, or who he has working with him, or how what his IQ is as far as body awareness or things like that versus like Swingham, who he's not going to put up in an elite exit velocity or elite arm strength across the infield, but you watch his actions and the hands have softness, and you see him make plays in games, and then his game at bats, he can handle the barrel, and he'll stay inside a ball and drive it to right field, and he may be more of a doubles guy in college versus somebody with elite bat speed and impressive numbers and hits the ball out in BP, but you can look at the swing and you can say I can pitch to that guy, and I think where those guys end up, it really comes down to the preference of the programs and what those programs like better. Some will take a chance and believe in their development, and other programs want guys who are ready, and you can kind of plug them in to compete for a job right away.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's a really good point in terms of how lists can differ. And we're putting this list together, and you're like me when I was trying to do it, you're trying to kind of balance out where do guys fit, and then different types of guys. So you're not just bunching, really strong guys, and then all your really quick guys are down here. You're probably trying to fit those guys in and just alternate them a little bit. Whereas, a Charlotte, when I was recruiting coordinator, in App State, where you were the recruiting coordinator, we had a specific tool set we were looking for. We were going to lean a little bit more towards fast twitch because we could really develop strength. Our strength system allowed us to go get body types and fast twitch guys and then turn them over to our strength guys. And in 6 months, we would catch up that ground on that strong guy. Whereas you guys may have been a little bit different. So I think that's a great point in terms of how colleges are looking at it. And I think it's also something that maybe overlooked with the pro guys and trying to kind of mesh. Where is their player development system really strong? Where is it weak? And how does that affect the way that we grade guys as we're watching them and trying to prep for the draft? We may have a guy that, and more likely it's coming from the higher ups because the area guys are going to put their numbers on guys, but the higher ups are looking at those numbers and they may move up guys that fit that body type or fit that spectrum of guy. They've had a ton of success moving through their system and getting to the big leagues.
Yeah, you kind of got on the list, Matthew Aldridge. He can do things that you can't teach, but you could also show up and see him on a bad week where nothing's in sync, and you could come away with two vastly different impressions of him
Right.
as a player.
Yeah, and that affects everything we're doing too, and that's why we're trying to be out as much as we are and trying to gather as much information as we can, especially with the younger players. As I get to be seniors, a lot of that it becomes, and not that it's what they're going to be in 4 years, but at that point we have to put a grade on them, and we have to say this is who you are. You're inconsistent. But as a junior, as a sophomore, definitely as a freshman, we don't have to put that moniker on them yet. We can just decide, hey, we're going to grade out their top end. We're just going to grade out what they are average on a day-to-day basis. That's where our rank's going to be, knowing there's room to that ceiling and knowing we can jump them up. As we get into the 24s and really look at that 24 class, we kind of have to start dialing into what are they now, what are they going to be in 8 months, because we're starting to kind of get to that draft process with those guys, and then maybe looking ahead a little bit, just like the pro guys would, trying to project out a senior, what's he going to be when he's 22, 23, and ready to get to the big leagues. We can do some of that with what we're doing with our rankings, but really that 24 class, it's mano a mano, and we're kind of really a little bit more heads up. Where with the 25 class, there's still that wiggle room of what could be in the future.
Yeah, 25 class, a lot of those mid 80s right-handers that you know you can see them making a jump, and where they're at the next time is who's worked and who has made that jump, and whose bodies continue to develop.
Let's turn the page a little bit. We're going to kind of stay within the rankings and within this 25 class, but let's start looking at some of the guys that are uncommitted towards the top of the class that we haven't talked about. We've talked about Baird. We've talked about is Pichardo committed?
He was. He is not anymore.
Okay, so Pichardo's open. That's right. I remember that now. Max Luzaraga. Max was a guy that we had invited to the future games that already had some camps lined up and decided to honor his commitment to those camps, which was, perfectly fine for us. Opened up a roster spot to somebody else, but he's a guy that we saw at the Dirtbag Scout Day and a guy that the Dirtbags have really raved about. But he has not pitched a ton at Weddington because he was needed at first base. He was needed in the lineup, and they had some other arms they were able to throw. But I think Weddington's got an ace ready to roll as a junior here. What do you like about Max, and what do you think colleges are kind of looking for as they're evaluating the rest of this class?
He's big, strong, and athletic. Arm strength's obviously there, and he can spin the ball. And I think he's a lot of people like him, and I think everyone's curious to see how much more's in the tank.
Yeah, he's also a high academic player, so he's going to have some options in terms of the academic side too, and trying to weigh how he goes through that. But it's a really whippy arm. We've seen 89. I know some guys have seen a little bit better, and he hadn't pitched a lot, so I think there's still a lot of rounds left in that chamber. John Lash at 24 from Charlotte Christian, left-handed pitcher, maybe a first baseman, outfielder, a dual sport guy, plays basketball. John's been hurt though and hadn't been able to pitch, so still a little bit of an enigma. And you've seen him with our rankings over the last couple times out fall, not a ton, shift. We'll call it shifting instead of falling, but a lot of it having to do with that injury and us just not being able to see him.
Yeah, it's dual sport guy, so obviously he devotes some time to basketball and plays off season basketball there, and been hurt, and he's a guy that healthy could move back up.
With this class, and again, the 24s are dealing with it now. The 25s are starting to deal with it because they're just now back in communication with college coaches, setting up visits, going through the process. But the college coaches are still going to be kind of holding back because they know that transfer portal's there, so they don't have to be in a huge hurry with this class. Waiting to see what's going to happen. Late, next summer and even into next year, trying to figure out their rosters. Typically, we see left-handed hitters, left-handed pitchers, bats, and runners go off the board. For players that aren't seeing the traction that they want yet, the ability, maybe they were expecting a bunch of phone calls on August 1st. Maybe they only got a couple. What kind of suggestions, what kinds of things should these players be doing as they're kind of now able to communicate with college coaches and sifting through that process of what is, their recruiting year to 2 years?
I think it gives them an opportunity to go out and play without the pressure of feeling like one weekend or 1 week can make you or break you. Colleges will see them some this fall, and then gather information in the high school season and really dial in on them in the month of June next summer. And so I think it, as a player, it gives them, they can trust their developmental process and focus on it and realize that, if they have a bad weekend in October, it's not going to cost them the spot. I think, with colleges being a little slower to move with all that's going on versus in years past.
I think it's a great point, especially for the 25 class. The big movement with the 25 class, you see some at the end of the summer, at the end of their junior year, but really you're talking about the top 30 to 40 guys. And when we go through our list, I mean, we're at 29, and it's pretty steady with the number of commitments. And then they've kind of got a couple sprinkled through there with guys that may have found their right fit. But that's normal. Maybe it's a little light, a little bit. But that big rush, that next big window for these guys, you'll see a little sprinkling in the fall. You may see a little sprinkling prior to the spring season. But the big rush comes in next June when every school has really kind of completed that next incoming class. They know what's going to be missing. They have a feel for what's going to be drafted. They have a feel for the senior class, and they know exactly what their holes are. Now they can hit it hard. Typically your Power Fives are a little bit further ahead, and those guys are working right now. But a lot of mid majors really aren't starting on this class until they get through their upcoming spring season, and they'll start getting out and seeing high school games. And then early in the summer, they'll hit those guys hard. And then with North Carolina, some of our events early and in the state games in North Carolina, give those guys a chance to see them multiple times, bang, 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 and make decisions and move forward. So, I think with this class, if guys are wanting to set up visits, they're wanting to build relationships, I think this is a good time. I just don't think this class needs to be in a real big hurry in terms of, hey, what are you guys doing? How many are you bringing in? What type of scholarship offer you think I'm going to be on? Am I a guy that fits? I think it's going to be more about getting to know that school, that university, their academic department, their athletic training staff, their strength conditioning staff, their coaches as a whole, and do you fit? And then can we get to a point where athletically I get to that point where you want to offer me a scholarship or you want to offer me a roster spot or however that works. But I think that building of that relationship, really starting with the 25 class, has a chance to take hold more so than it has in the past when schools felt like they had to move a lot faster.
Yeah, I think those schools have, they can really sit back and watch guys develop and making sure they're making right decisions versus, a couple years ago where it was, you see a guy twice and you go ahead and pull the trigger and, deal with whatever happens after that. And I think, these coaches will have a good feel for this class by the time we get to next summer.
And Matt, as we finish up this podcast, let's turn the page and talk a little bit beginning of school year. Beginning of school year, colleges have started, they're back, they're working out, but the beginning of the high school year as well. I'm seeing a lot of high schools set up, their informational meetings. Come by and see me. You got to fill this out. We're going to get ready on our fall. Think back to your freshman year at NC State, your freshman year at AC Reynolds. Think back to your senior year at each. And, any advice for, let's start with the leaders of the team. Any advice for the leaders, the guys that are now juniors and seniors, the guys that are going to be helping the coaching staff kind of push the mission forward in terms of dealing with younger players and being that mentor that maybe they've never had to be?
I think it's like so much different now from when I played. Is when we were all playing other sports, so I think you did some baseball in the fall, but there was a lot more, I feel like, multi-sport guys then. I think a big thing for guys now is balance your field time versus your weight room time and speed and agility time. I think you can gain more by being off the field and doing some other things versus just being on the field every day and going through the same routines and get your work in, but make sure you're getting it in the right areas. You have all winter to gear back up.
The thing I would say too is grab those younger guys and put your arm around them. It's easy to be the hard ass. It's easy to be the guy that's cracking the whip and telling people what to do. It's harder, I think, for a lot of players to go outside their comfort zone and get to know really a player that from a maturation standpoint may not be anywhere near you. Juniors and seniors are a lot closer to adulthood than freshmen. And the things that you've experienced and the things that you're getting to do and the things you're looking forward to versus the freshman who right now, honestly, is just day to day trying to survive high school. So can you put your arm around them? And the idea being when things get rocky in the spring and you're having to lean on that guy, does that guy know he can trust you? Are we building trust? Are we building a relationship? I saw the SEC thing where Skip Bertman talks about hold the rope. Are you really holding the rope right now for the younger guys and allowing them to catch up and hold onto the rope themselves? Or are you dragging the rope at a pace that they can't keep up with? Because we need everybody on the rope pulling in the same direction. So that's the first thing. And then with the younger guys, and I'm interested to get your perspective on this too, Matt. my advice for the freshmen and even some sophomore that are now starting to kind of feel themselves a little bit and starting to kind of look out and go, man, maybe I can make varsity. Maybe I can contribute to a state championship. Maybe we can be part of this. Be willing to fail in the fall. Be willing to fail in the weight room. Be willing to fail on the field. Put yourself in positions where you're uncomfortable. Tryouts aren't until February. You're going to do a lot of good things between now and then, and you can put yourself in a better light as you get towards the end of the year if you're really worried about making a team. But right now, put yourself in positions to fail. Make the workouts hard. Make the weight room hard, and enjoy that failure. I can remember being a freshman at Millbrook High School way back when, and they had the weightlifting in the summer where we could go lift with the football team. And I didn't have any structured weight room stuff, but I was, 5'8", 5'9", 90 pounds. And I'm putting in a lifting group, and they're putting plates on the side of the deal, and I'm struggling to push the bar plus 10 pounds on each side, just physically weak. And I had guys in that room that were saying, that's a great job, way to go, do what you can do, get to failure, we're going to get you stronger, versus seeing other guys on the other side of the room that were struggling just like I was, with guys laughing and sneering and tickering about, how light a weight they had on the bar. What's the environment like, and what are we battling there as a locker room can determine a lot of what happens in the spring. Now, I don't know if you have any – you were a much better athlete than I was as a freshman, much stronger than I was as a senior, but thoughts on some of that things that you lived through, maybe even in NC State or in Pro Ball?
Don't quit in the weight room. You're just because you can't do the weights other guys do the first couple weeks doesn't mean you won't get there. So, stay with it, be consistent. I think if you can be consistent for a month, you'll surprise yourself with what kind of jumps you make in there, and then on the baseball field, be versatile. Especially young guys, be willing to play anywhere and show you can play. And I know you said it before, the cream always rises to the top.
That's a good point with being versatile, because there's the one thing as a coach I always struggled with was, I'm a shortstop. Well, I need you to play second. Well, I'm a shortstop. Okay, well, you can't play anywhere else. That's fine. You can go sit. When I need a shortstop, I'll come get you. But right now, I got an All-American at short, so you'll be waiting a couple years. Be versatile. Be a baseball player. Be willing to go anywhere. We saw it. One of the guys we took to future games this year, Xavier McQuarrie. He's an advanced defender at short. I mean, he was really good, but they had a senior. They had a senior as a Division I prospect, and going to play at Charlotte, and Xavier moved out to left, and he was in the lineup every day. And there's no doubt in my mind that him seeing high-level varsity pitching over the course of 4 or 5 months, even though he's playing quote-unquote out of position, has helped him tremendously in his development. And he's still got reps on the infield because his coaching staff, they're smart dudes, and they know what's coming down the pike. Yes, he needs out reps in the outfield because that's where he's playing now, but we're not going to sacrifice our future just to leave him and stick him there. He's going to get reps on the infield too. And most coaching staffs across the state operate in that fashion.
Yeah. Who you got tomorrow night, Florida or Utah?
Florida, or is that football?
Yeah, Florida, Utah.
It's going to be in Utah, right?
Yep, in Utah.
Yeah, I can't pick Florida, and my wife will tell you I was yelling at the Netflix series because they didn't cover things, going on. But you saw me. I'm laser focused right now. I'm right here because it's game week for Georgia, and we got UT Martin, and UT Martin. They may win a Division I AA championship. That may be the best sleeper team in the country. We don't know. They may have pros all over the place. So we got to be ready to go for that one. My brother actually went to UT Martin, and as we're big Georgia fans, having grown up in Atlanta, we've been flipping him crap all week as to who he's going to cheer for and what he's got going on. So I'm excited for football just being here. I've been looking to see if I can't get into the Chapel Hill, South Carolina game. It's Saturday somehow, some way. And just, I've thought about going down to game day just to kind of be out and about and experience people and, being a part of it. So one of the best times of the year, no doubt. Who's your sleeper that's got a chance to challenge for second place this year?
sleeper. I think Florida
TCU
will.
last year.
It, there's only. I mean, it's the SEC. I mean, we saw what happened to TCU last year. Um, I think Florida's the sleeper in the SEC.
Okay.
I think Alabama will be better than people expect,
Okay.
and Ole Miss. Interested to see what Ole Miss does.
So the one I'm interested to see is LSU, and I know everybody's picking LSU, but what I'm interested to see about them is everybody's up on Jalen Davis, the Arizona State kid who came in and played quarterback last year. He moves around kind of, he throws the ball well kind of, but they love him, they talk about him, and great. Well, he got hurt in the SEC championship game against Georgia, or he bowed out, whatever happened. The other dude that came in can really sling it. I mean, really sling it. I'm interested to see if LSU, if they don't hit a spell at some point during the year where they flip the ball to the other kid and say, hey, air it out, and he didn't go put 40 on somebody, and now we've got a quarterback competition leading into the game at Alabama. Um, so I'm excited about that one. The other one I'm excited about is a little bit of kind of that hometown one, and having worked there for so long, Biff Poggi at Charlotte. They had the number one transfer portal class in the country. Um, he's raving about their defense, which they gave up like 50 points a game last year and got rid of everybody. But with Biff's background, if you haven't seen the HBO deal in St. Francis in Maryland, and Biff's background as a money manager and basically getting out of that world to go coach high school football and then landing on Harbaugh's staff at Michigan, I'm interested to see how he handles the day-to-day at a place like Charlotte. Because Charlotte's one of those places everybody talks about, man, it's a sleeping giant. It's a sleeping giant. It's not, because they're not financially ready to be a giant yet. It's in a great spot. It's got great, there's great things about it, but there are things that have to be in place. And, you've seen it. You've been at a high level ACC program, and then you've also coached a junior college program. And I don't care how hard you work, there are certain things that money makes up for. There are certain things that are put in place that you're putting yourself in a better position when you have X, Y, and Z. And they don't have that yet at Charlotte, but I think expectations are starting to rise with the new conference. I'm excited to see how they kind of handle that. And then if some rivalries develop with all this back and forth in terms of the shifting of the conferences, does Charlotte East Carolina become a bigger rivalry with them being in the same conference? I don't think East Carolina wants to accept that. I don't think they have to yet, but that'll be interesting for me. I did read this morning Oregon State and Washington State or Washington were looking at the AAC if SMU goes to the ACC. So I think you coached. You have any interest in getting on a plane, leaving, not getting on a plane in Boone because you can't, driving to Charlotte or Greensboro, flying to Oregon State, playing, coming back, and that's a conference series you got to do every other year.
Yeah, there's
It'd
no
be
point
cool
in it.
once as a non-conference. I don't have any interest in doing it as a conference series.
No, and doing it every year, and not just football, but all the other sports got to do it as well. And we know the budgets that some sports get, and that's makes for some miserable travel, especially when you're not within
I have never
2 hours of an airport. So
well I've
you
never
know,
chartered. I can remember when chartering was becoming a bigger thing, and schools would typically, we were able to pick off schools like Boston College or Virginia or Virginia Tech when they were going to Clemson. We could pick them off on the way down because they wanted to get there. They wanted to work out Thursday. Come play us Wednesday night. Get up and go on down there Thursday and be ready for your weekend. And then a couple of those schools would call us the year of and be like, "Hey, we're chartering, so we don't have to do this anymore." So it doesn't make any sense for us to charter to Charlotte and charter to Clemson. We're just going to charter directly to Clemson, but we appreciate you. So, um, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what the NCAA does, and it's going to trickle down to baseball. It's going to trickle down. It's going to affect everybody. But I'm hoping somebody smart steps in and just says, you know what, USC being in the same conference as Rutgers, screw that. Nobody wants to see that. Two, I don't know that the kids from either place really want to go do that trip more than once. I think going to the West Coast and playing somebody twice in 4 years, that would be pretty cool. But I have no interest being at Charlotte or Wilmington and going and playing Pepperdine or Hawaii or Cal State Fullerton every single year and doing that trip 3 times a year. That's just there's I don't want to do that. And if I'm a West Coast kid right now and the way it's setting up, some of those West Coast teams are going to be making that trip 3 to 4 times a year.
Yeah, and then you get back on a Monday, and then you got a bus ride on Tuesday for a midweek game, and just hurts you more than it helps you in a lot of ways, I think, unless you're really seeing the money, and I don't know that they will.
Well, I know the guys in South Carolina do this. I know you've been on their podcast, been a part of it. But let's roll through it just a couple games real quick. Florida or Utah, who you got?
Florida.
Okay, I'm taking Utah. Virginia or Tennessee at Tennessee?
Tennessee.
East Carolina or Michigan?
Michigan.
And I'll let you know if I disagree. UT Martin or Georgia?
Georgia.
I'm telling you, don't underestimate UT Martin now.
It's a good game for Georgia to play the guys that the walk-ons, or not the walk-ons, but the red shirts that get their 4 games. Georgia can.
It's not going to happen, though. Kirby's got to get his guys in game shape. He's going to play his starters into the 4th, I guarantee you, because he's worried about game shape. There's another one. Oh, UNC, South Carolina here in Charlotte.
Drake May can't win the Heisman in one game, but he can lose it. And
okay.
I think South Carolina in that one.
I'm interested to see who can run the ball in that game. I think the D-line and the O-line for both those clubs are going to be extremely important this year. And so I'm leaning South Carolina right now just because I think defensive line will hold up and create an instance where Drake May has to do it all. And I don't know that his wide receivers are ready to handle that. Drake, I think, would be fine if he's got enough weapons. I just don't know that the weapons will be ready. And then the final one, let's do LSU, Florida State, Sunday, 7:30.
I'm going Florida State.
The return of the Seminoles. You're taking it. It says they're at home. Is this game being played neutral? I can't tell. That says at Florida State. I'm assuming that all the hurricane stuff will be out. I know Tallahassee's taking a beating today, so prayers to everybody there, and hopefully they got through it. Well, I like SEC teams early in the year. I just and I don't think Florida State has learned completely how to win yet, and I think LSU's got a lot of momentum coming off of how they finished last year. So I'm going to go LSU. We'll tease that. We may do a graphic and throw that up there, and then steal that from South Carolina, but we won't tell them. So, all right, man. Well, I appreciate you jumping on again this week. I appreciate your insight on the 2025 rankings. For everybody out there, prepbaseballreport.com starting Wednesday. Every state in the system is dropping their 2025 rankings. On Friday, our national, our overall rankings will drop with that class. There's going to be a heavy, heavy, heavy feed of North Carolina players in the overall. Subscribe to this podcast. Subscribe so you can see every time we post, and then also throughout the week we'll have some shorts and some other links that we'll post out of here, and we may get a little bit heavier on that as we kind of get into some events going into the fall. But your ability to subscribe helps us as we're trying to get this information out. And then if you're not seeing everything on the website, if you can't see all the rankings, if you can't see everything we've published, but you've been to an event, ping us, because we have a subscription we can get you for, if you haven't taken advantage of it, we can get you a subscription, allow you to see everything for a penny. If you've already taken advantage of that, then there are multiple. There's a monthly fee and there's a yearly out there that you can go see and kind of get caught up to date on the rankings. And positive feedback only, because our egos are fragile. We can only take the positive stuff, right, Matt?
That's right.
For Matt Payne, I'm Brandon Hall. This is the Prep Baseball Report North Carolina podcast, and we'll see you at the field.